Welcome to this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind. I'm Larry Weidel, and before we get started, if you want to know exactly how to win again and again, go to weidelonwinning.com/webinar now to watch something I've put together for you. Now let's get going into this episode of Million Dollar Mastermind. I'm talking with Brian Johnson this afternoon. He's co-founder of E3 Association. And under that association, they got 4 brands associated with E3 Firearms, E3 Camping, E3 Overland, and E3 Off-Road. As main focus is to help E3 fulfill their business vision. He's attended Harvard Business School. He's worked with companies in 34 industries. He's an entrepreneur. And so, Brian, thanks for being with us. Looking forward to talking. You bring a different background, and obviously that's what we like to do, is get people with different backgrounds and different perspectives on making great things happen. And so how did you get launched into find yourself doing what you're doing today?
Okay, great. And Larry, thanks for having me here. I'm really looking forward to it. I love everything you're doing, so I'm glad to be on a call. And I guess how it started, and we have many more companies in our portfolio than just the E3s, but I got to tell you, E3s are the funnest. They're a passion. We have a blast, and it's just one that's been some of the most successful brands that we've ever built. And, they really started out of seeing a couple of, I guess, gaps in industries. There was a few things. One is, it started with, the first one was E3 Firearms. And the reason it started is my daughters were going out and doing their training, and they're getting their concealed carry licenses. And they were watching people on YouTube and sending me videos and saying, hey, check this guy out, or hey, check this person out, or hey, check this girl. And I said, you need to stop watching those people. They were YouTube yahoos that thought they knew everything, or maybe they came out of a school or a military and all of a sudden think that they're experts, and they're teaching dangerous things. I thought stuff that was so unsafe. And I did some research in just that industry, and I looked at it, I'm like, wow, there's such a gap in this industry that there aren't any really good, incredibly vetted programs that are online that would really help people get started. And, I'm an advocate for, there's nothing like being on a range or doing, real world training of things, but there was at least a gap that I saw that needed some vetted good content. And then the second gap I saw is it got to a place where digital and online started to become a lot more prevalent, and there's a lot of stuff out there, but it got to the point where it was so saturated. And then I felt like, wait, there's just something missing. We've lost this human element to all these digital programs. And I said, maybe the E3, which is empower, educate, and entertain, I want to be able to bring some life and some human back into a digital program. So we basically launched E3 Firearms that was vetted content. So we went out and got the top experts that we could find to create vetted content. And then we brought more live aspects into it. So not only you're in this membership, but it was able to be part of a community, that you could get on live calls, that you could, go to different events together. We could travel and do trips together. So I just saw these two needs. One is bringing more human element into the digital world, and then also just seeing vetted content. And then as a result of that, what we were able to do after we got our house brands and our house registrations, anything with E3 and association, anything in the middle, we own those registrations, is we're able to now duplicate those models into different verticals, which brings us to the next hurdle, which was, okay, well, which verticals do you do? And that was the next challenge. So the verticals were trying to find industries like Overland that was somewhat new, or firearms that we talked about, or even off-roading, RVing, things like that weren't already saturated. And, we have people that tell me, oh, let's go into the golf industry. Let's go into this. And, I love all that stuff. Let's go into the fishing industry. But the reality is when you look into those industries, they're already so saturated that I didn't want to fight that battle. So we're able to duplicate what I just talked about, that model, and then basically clone those and drive them into the different verticals that we saw that were lacking kind of that model that I talked about in those industries. So that's kind of the short story of how we kind of got into it, how we got rolling, and then our growth has just been absolutely incredible.
Talk about your growth.
Well, boy, we went from starting out not too many years ago, about 5 years ago, to the first couple hundred members, and it's a monthly membership, to now we're in the tens of thousands of members, and growing every month consistently. And I think part of it is not only the growth, but it's our retention. And I think the retention comes from the E of the empowerment side. So we have the education in there, we have the entertainment, but the empowerment side is part of what we also wanted to do, is to be able to change people's lives in a positive way. And we decided that instead of trying to go out and try to be personal development or sell personal development or go into focused quote unquote personal development, what we've done is we've went into these niche industries, got people involved in what they're passionate about, like off-roading, and then we're able to infuse other things like education and personal development into that. So when people become members, they look at that kind of model and they're like, oh my God, I came here for off-road, but I had no idea how this was actually going to change my life. And then they don't leave. So not only we focus on growth, but retention is also a big key driver for us.
Well, you and I have a mutual friend, Elaine Johnson, Elaine and Paul, and they gave me some of the material early on, and it just seemed to me this is going to be, it seemed like a new idea. Maybe it's not a new idea, but it was certainly a new company. And when you're starting something unique that people are not familiar with, you got an uphill climb, and also you have a multi option. You had many different things you did. Seems like you started a lot with the firearms and the firearm training, but now Elaine's told me about some of these adventures and trips you've had in Utah, and talk about some of those things.
Yeah, well, that's part of the community side of these. So even though we're a monthly online membership, we infuse into the membership the ability to be part of communities and trips. And, we just did a big trip to the Grand Canyon. We had 100 rigs come with us. We have another one going to Texas with RVs. So it brings the community together. It brings them together in a way that when we do these events, as them being a member, they get access to these events, and then they show up and we do all kinds of education. We do some talks, we do some fun, we do some off-roading, we have dinners and meals, and we just do really cool, fun conferences and events that are all tied into this online monthly digital model.
And you've created a place, using the internet, to where people all over the world really can stay plugged in, get information, but then also you've combined that to where you have, I guess, live online conferences, but the live events, it's one thing to go off-roading with your kids or your family and go on some of these trips, but it's a whole lot more fun when you're doing it in groups. And I'm out here in Aspen, about 3 hours away from Moab, which is a huge outdoor recreation center for the West, and all kind of climbing and cycling and off-road. And, they're always having these rallies where hundreds of, Jeeps or hundreds of Land Rovers or hundreds of this, that, the other motorcycles, they're coming in and doing things. And, this is for people who want an option to spend time in the outdoors and healthy family activities. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And we do a lot of stuff in Moab, Jeep Jamboree and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no doubt. So it's a passion that they have. So it's something they think about, like, hey, I want to go do this, or they're new and they're like, we're able to expose them to some of these incredible events. But what we try to do is infuse into these incredible events of not just coming out and just going off-roading, but we try to infuse to more education, how to be safer, how to save money, how to not make mistakes that we all made. because that's a reality. All of us, when we start in these hobbies and stuff new, we waste too much money. We spend too much time making mistakes. So we help people shortcut those things, and we infuse, great food and community and good fun, and we encourage people, hey, make friends, create your other trips, and then we have our own online tools that really help facilitate all that stuff I just saw, where they can connect with other members and create different groups and Northeast group and things like that. So there's definitely a lot that we kind of bring into that aspect that you just talked about. So instead of, hey, everybody, let's just meet up, we infuse just so much more activities into that kind of concept.
I get the idea. A lot of these activities were things you were interested in and already doing. Is that right? And the chance to build a business and expand that, I can spend more time doing what I like to do. Is that the idea?
Well, it certainly started that way. I mean, of course, we all want to try to do things we're passionate about or have interest in or love to do. There's no doubt about that. But then I just had to look at, well, if that's the case, and I'm having these experiences as a newbie, and I've wasted too much money, well, then what's my objective? Well, I can create a business that helps people to not make all the mistakes I make and fills the gap of the things I wish I had when I was in this hobby that I don't have and is not out there. So yeah, they definitely started with being in industries I have a passion for and things. So no doubt about that. And that makes a huge difference.
Brian, where are you from?
From Boston. Can you hear the accent?
Yeah, maybe a little. Not really, not too much. But how do you grow up in Boston and you've got a passion for hunting, a passion for shooting and guns and outdoor activities and off-roading? How do you grow up with that? How'd you get infected with that fever in Boston? Hey, listen, there's a lot of information online, but there aren't a lot of people who've actually done something. In my case, I've actually built a successful business that's accrued over $5 billion in assets under management and has done well even during trying times. Now, if you want to know exactly how I've done this, go to whiteelemwinning.com/webinar now. I've compressed a decade of learning into 5 short weeks just for those of you who want to give yourself an incredible advantage and are tired of waiting and watching others move up.
Well, I don't know if it was Boston that did it or just seeing different hobbies or industries or things that interest me. And then I think the key word is take action. Go do something, try it.
What was your first step? You sticking your toe in the water. I remember my my oldest son grows up and, we're looking for things to do together. And sure enough, he wants to go deer hunting, but also bow hunting. And also not just with a bow, but with not a compound bow, a long bow. And so I knew nothing about any of this stuff. And maybe some of these areas you got started in, but I mean, I had never even read a magazine. I didn't even know what the magazines looked like. So we went through, the months of getting the magazines, finding where the hunting clubs were. And so that's one thing you do, you look for, they are actually bow hunting clubs around. And so, you find people who are in the, with a similar interests, and they show you the ropes. But sooner or later, you got to get out on your own, and you're making, we were sitting out in trees and never, for years and not, spinning our wheels. And eventually, though, you make some progress, but it's sure nice when you can find someone to show you the ropes. What was your, I think my son got interested in that just to punish me. Again, the one thing that I had absolutely no training background in. And of course, now we've hunted everywhere and bow hunted, but you had to make your first step forward. What was your first step forward into these worlds?
Well, I think it's the same thing I do now with everything I do. And the first part is actually doing something, and what I did is, if it was something I was interested in, instead of hanging around and thinking about it and shoulda, coulda, woulda, I found somebody that was an expert. I found somebody even like yourself in the business world. And I'd go hire somebody like you, Larry, a coach. And I just go say, hey, I'm interested in this. Take me out. I want to experience it. I need to know what it's like to see if this is something I'm really interested in or not. Whether it's pay them, and if I can't afford it, then I'd barter with them, or I would do whatever it took to actually just go do it. Again, I'm a big fan of not being in the shoulda, coulda, woulda. But if it's something you're really interested in, or you're not sure you're even interested in, well, there's one way to find out. Go do it. Figure it out. And that's kind of how I do everything. No matter what we do, no matter what industry we're going into, I find somebody that is doing it, and whether you can turn them into a mentor or a coach or hire them or whatever it takes, just go do it. Too many people sit around and just wait and think that they could have done it, as opposed to, how about taking a Sunday and just go figure it out one day?
Yeah. So what were your first steps into this? So can you remember how, because in the beginning, you were always tentative in new things and uh feel out of place. But then, what I've found, Brian, is in life, you have to make room for yourself wherever you want to go, in a company, in an industry, in a sport, or whatever. It's kind of like you start off and you're in the outside, and this is something that you're looking in, and from the outside it's like looking through a window. It's like a party going on, and people, they know each other inside, they're chatting each other up, they're having fun, but you're on the outside of the cold, but you want to get in there. And so sooner or later you got to get in there and you got to make room for yourself. And when you get in the room, like you get in the industry or in a business or whatever, you got to create space for yourself. You got to meet people. You got to do some things to where now I belong in this world. Space in your schedule to where you got the time to do it. And then you go in there, you get the resources you need, you get the friendships you need, but you go make space. All of a sudden now, in this universe, or all these universes, you started on the outside, but you become a force in multiple industries now. You've created space for yourself, and it's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. But how did you break the bubble on the? It seems to be scary on the front end, just because you don't know what you're getting into. And what were those first experiences like that gave you the encouragement, like, this is how I'm going to do it going forward in my life? Because you had to do something right and have positive feedback from that, to where you said, okay, this is a pattern that works. I'm going to do this again and again when I have interest.
Yeah, definitely. And it's probably the hardest part of my life and my job, and that's finding the right partners. So how I did it, based on what you're saying, is I went into those industries and I looked for and searched and asked a lot of questions to find the right people that were already doing it or knew this. And then from that standpoint, I had to kind of do a little research on those people to feel like, and this might sound corny, but do they have the right energy? Do I feel the right energy? Because they have to connect with me. I have to connect with them. And if I would narrow it down to some people that I felt like, hey, I can relate to these couple or to this person, and this feels right. I could be in business with these people. I could have dinner with this person 20 years from now. And I had to kind of get to that point. And then I reached out to him, literally picked the phone up, made a call, and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. This is what I'm interested in, and I just want to see, is this something you're interested in? If you're in, I'd like to just set up. I'll fly out. I'll see you. We'll have dinner. Let's talk, and let's explore if we can do this together. And if you're not, I don't want to waste your time. So that's how I basically initially, I just literally, people ask me, Larry, all the time, I make so many deals. I do so many business deals. I make so many deals with big companies, and we have giant sponsors and all this kind of stuff. And people are like, how do you do that? How in the world, how did you make a deal with Jeep? How did you make a deal with 6 Hour? I mean, how in the world do you do it? I was in the boardroom with the CEO of 6 Hour and all the executives, and they're like, how in the world do you do that? And I say, I pick the phone up and I call them. Now I'm joking, but that's the reality. It's like, I understand what my objective is. I know what my goal is. And then I close the gap and say, well, then how do I need to do that? Well, I need to be sitting in the boardroom with that CEO. So let me start down the path to go do that. So it's really just finding the right people, feeling the right energy, seeing if these are people I'd want to be partners with. I pick the phone up and I call them and I go meet them and try to make it happen. And that is really, it might sound simple, Larry. You might be looking for more of a complex answer, but the reality is I pick the phone up, I make it happen. I go sit in front of them, I shake their hands and see if we can make a deal.
And what are some of the biggest ones that you're most proudest of your relationship, big companies that you've made deals with, and that you enjoyed the most, that impressed yourself the most with? You mentioned Jeep. Any others that we would relate to?
Well, I mean, there's large ones within the industries, like Sig Sauer is a big giant firearms company. They absolutely loved what we do. In the industries like off-roading, we have giant retailers like Northridge 4x4 and, just big players within those industries. So they might not be as big as, everybody here might know like Jeep, but within the industries, we make deals with the biggest players in those industries. And they basically look at our model and they're like, hey, this makes sense to me. We want to work with you guys.
And then they're like huge companies in the camper world and the RV world and things like that. And so there's a universe of monster companies that most of us have never heard of. And it's a huge breakthrough when you get associated with them if you're in those industries, because people in those industries soon and have those interests soon find out who the power players are. And if you've got relationships with them, that credibility flows over to you. I'm sure when you got the relationship going with Jeep, that had to do, step up your credibility with people going forward, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It definitely does when they see those kinds of partners, and even more so as people in the industry see those partners email for us or promote us. That's really what sets it off, because everybody sees it. So when you see a big company like a Jeep or a Northridge 4x4 send an email out promoting our company, that sends a shockwave through the whole industry, that everybody kind of looks at you and says, wow, you got Jeep promoting you guys? I mean, I think we should be talking to you. So that's definitely a big deal. But I think, Larry, in the beginning, though, when we launched these in different verticals, we're a small fish. We're not really known. I mean, we are now that we're able to piggyback on our other brands to launch into a new brand. But even so, we're a small brand. So how we actually get into these relationships and create a relationship is we just basically go in and say, look, we'll do this for free. Let us put our money where our mouth is. We'll move the needle for you. We'll show you that we can actually do it. And if we do, then we're looking for this relationship. So we go in first trying to see, what can we do for you? How can we help you? How can we, move the needle for you? And we specifically ask those companies, what is it you need in your business model right now? What is it you need that I can deliver? Let me prove it to you and let me do it. And then if I do that, I'm looking for a long-term relationship with you.
All right. Thanks so much, Brian. If you enjoyed what you've heard and are dead serious about finding out for yourself exactly how this works in the real world, I've taken the most valuable business lessons I've learned over 40 years and put them into something for you to watch. Go to whiteelementary.com/webinar now in order to move up as fast as possible. I'm Larry Weidel, and I run the $1 Million Mastermind. Go, go, go.